Hey fam, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications. Looks like Ben Carson might actually be doing something for black people there as Secretary of HUD. The department he heads, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, they are suing Facebook for violating the Fair Housing Act by encouraging, enabling, and causing housing discrimination through its advertising platform. This is what Carson said, quote, Facebook is discriminating against people based upon who they are and where they live. Using a computer to limit a person's housing choices can be just as discriminatory as slamming a door in someone's face. Now, earlier this week, we told you that Facebook announced they would no longer allow advertisers to use data to discriminate in ads for housing. Civil rights groups have been pushing hard for them to do this. Also, Facebook announced they also are dealing with this whole issue of hate crimes, not allowing people to post comments dealing with white supremacists and targeting that. Civil rights groups have been supporting that as well. Let's go to my panel here on this. Greg, I want to go to you first. First, it's like, first of all, as I think about what Ben Carson has done, I have to, since I'm here in L.A., and this is where La La Land is, I have to think about the soldier story. My man Adolf Caesar. Oh, my God, the dead has arisen.
Well, I'm wondering who's
from The Color Purple.
Right, The Color Purple. That's right. Color Purple. That's right. Yeah, because in a soldier story, his line was, CJ, the black race don't need you no more. And so that's where he can say that clearly to Ben Carson sometimes. I'm sure Carson is following the script. Just like Betsy Idiot DeVos got blindsided when she didn't realize they had X'd out the Special Olympics the other day. I don't know what Ben Carson is reading from, but I suspect that the motive behind his statement has more to do with them attacking Facebook than anything else. As far as this Facebook banning hate speech or banning white nationalism, I was concerned having read their statement. They said that there were broader types of nationalism that were okay, like American pride and Basque separatism. And I thought, why would they single out Basque separatism? And I'm thinking to myself about some of the more rabid pro-Israel lobbies, and I'm thinking, are they trying to carve out exceptions? But my concern is how they will arbit what speech they will suppress and what speech they will allow, because the next thing you know, they may turn on the Nation of Islam. They may come, and at that point, us saying, well, get rid of the Klan, get rid of hate speech and white nationalism and white separatism, which everybody can agree on, we might then be more concerned. This First Amendment issue isn't as brightly cut as some people might see. So I don't know if this is a victory as much as it is something that could erode freedom of speech.
Lauren, the housing issue is critically important because, again, look, the power of Facebook is immense when you talk about digital ads. And to allow folks to essentially discriminate using that platform is dead wrong, and so it's good to see HUD having some type of activism and waking the hell up, because they've been asleep at the wheel for the last 2 years.
Yeah, but it's always political in the same way that they hate PBS, anything that they deem left-leaning. You know, the Trump administration, of course, has this, as Greg just said, has this obsession with Facebook with regard to what they view as blocking speech from the right. And so that's really what's going to be behind this. And, you know, as it goes forward, I think that they'll fully reveal that that's what's behind. Now Carson may, in fact, blunder and do something right for once in the time that he's been in there. But I suspect what they'll do is they'll start really going after Facebook very singularly and specifically in the same way they go after, you know, PBS. And it won't really reveal anything or fix anything, and it just will poke Facebook for a political reason.
Robert?
I told y'all to trust Ben Carson. I've been saying this for years. Ben Carson had our back the whole time. Ben Carson didn't just go from being the National Black History Museum to being this sellout Uncle Tom as he's been cast in the media in 3 years. Ben Carson been there for us. He's been fighting for us this entire time. He's been fighting to reform housing and urban development. On the point that Greg was making about the social media and white nationalist language, let's be very careful about that. Because if today they're banning David Duke Tomorrow it'll be the Farrakhan. The day after it'll be Garvey. After that it'll be Malcolm X. Then it'll be Dr. King. So let's not take these encroachments on freedom of speech lightly, because if it starts over there, all of a sudden white people found this new word, reverse racism, that they like to use all the time, and they like to use that indiscriminately. So they will use that against us very soon.
Robert, what the hell has Ben Carson been doing for us as HUD Secretary?
What Ben Carson has been doing as HUD Secretary, I'm glad you asked that because I did 2 hours of research in the car. What Ben Carson has been doing is reforming a broken housing and urban development department that has been broken for 30 years.
How?
Reforming programs, taking money out of certain areas, refocusing it on having mixed-use development. So instead of having giant housing projects in the middle of the city, there are urban slums. He's been working on creating funding mechanisms that create mixed-use environments.
Robert.
Yeah, go ahead.
Robert, let me help you out.
Links to it.
No, Robert, let me help you out. Because see, unfortunately for the argument you just made, you're talking to somebody whose expertise has been covering housing. I covered housing as a county government reporter for the Austin American-Statesman. Housing was under my purview, and I was a reporter for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram when I was City Hall reporter. The mixed-use development, that stuff started, first of all, under Jack Kemp, then when Henry Cisneros became head of HUD. This has been going on since the 90s. When I spent 6 years in Chicago, executive editor of the Chicago Defender, 2004 to 2007, I left Chicago in 2010. The Chicago Housing Department, they actually tore down those high-rises there, and guess what they went to? Mixed use. I actually covered those cover stories in the Chicago Defender. This ain't Ben Carson all of a sudden doing this, okay? This has been this has been the HUD official policy for about 25 years. Now, we're also dealing with the reality that with HUD, this is the same Ben Carson who told cities that they did not have to submit their plans as to how they were going to eradicate discrimination in housing. The cities complained saying, oh, this was too onerous, and he said, okay, that's fine, it's no problem. So explain to me, how was that good for black folks?
By reducing regulations, by reducing red tape, by getting projects moving instead of having 50 pages of documents that have to be submitted before you can break ground on a project.
You just missed that. You just missed what I said. Literally, allowed cities not to have to submit their plans to show how they were going to end housing discrimination in their cities. He overturned the rules of the Obama administration. That's what he did in the first year as HUD Secretary.
Because the rules under the Obama administration weren't working. Let's think back 4 years, think back 8 years. It's not like everybody in the hood was living in a land of milk and honey, and then Ben Carson came in and ruined it. What he did was take out onerous regulations.
That's not what was happening, Robert. The cities complained because they did not want to have to submit their housing plans. They all know this is just too much for us. No, too much is housing discrimination, Greg. That's the problem. And so, again, Robert, I get your point. You're conservative. You want to, hey, pump. You got your pom-poms out for Ben Carson. But the reality is they have rolled back civil rights in this administration, including in housing and urban development.
Of course. And Ben Carson is, again, they're taking their cue from the White House. You have an addled-minded human signing pen in Donald Trump. And what you really have in the White House is Mick Mulvaney in terms of domestic policy. Look at the evisceration of the HUD budget. The man didn't even fight for his own budget. Let's be very clear.
And in fact, Robert, I'm reading from, this is a headline, December 24th, 2018, Washington Post. Ben Carson's HUD dials back investigations into housing discrimination.
Because that money could be better used on actually building houses. I don't know why we're pretending that things were great 4 years, 8 years, 10 years ago instead of realizing those things need to be reformed.
No, Robert. No one said great. But if you are the Secretary of HUD and you're dialing back on the issue of investigating housing discrimination, that took place in 2018, the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act. The reality is that housing discrimination still impacts African Americans, still impacts others, and I'm sorry, it has not changed enough. I am not painting a picture that under Obama, under George W. Bush, under Bill Clinton, under George H.W. Bush, under Ronald Reagan, under Jimmy Carter, under Ford, under Nixon, that somehow public housing was this great thing. But what I'm not going to do is paint this Basquiat photo, this art piece of how amazing Carson has been doing, when I'm sorry, the evidence simply is not there to support your argument. Final comment, Robert, Lauren, Greg.
All right, Roland, see, you're fancy. You're talking about Basquiat and all these rich people things. I'm a country boy. There's this old saying, you can either have eggs...
Well, no. First of all, I said Basquiat because white folks would have said Picasso, and I'm gonna mention an African-American painter. But go right ahead.
Well, I'm gonna keep it country. There's an old saying, you can either have eggs or you can have chickens. So what we're saying is that we want everything to stay intact. We don't want to break any eggs. We don't want to create anything that will disrupt the system. But at the same time, we want to reform the system. Ben Carson came in a situation where he was walking into a broken system that's been broken for 50 years and had to fix it. And part of that was destroying what existed to build it back up. The only way to build something new is to take down what didn't work for the last 50 years.
Well, why would Ben Carson?
Lauren, one of the things that Carson did was that this was according to Washington Post. Another Obama rule that held lenders and landlords liable for policies that led to discrimination, even if none was intended. Lauren, Carson rolled that back too. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, well, not only did he roll it back, of course, in the president's budget, there's a massive, massive cut to HUD. You know, one of the magic tricks the conservatives love to perform is this idea that we're making things better by cutting them and making them simple. Yeah, okay. So housing in the United States has always been, you know, with regard to redlining and everything else, a racially, and with this president, of course, in his history, a race-based situation. So I'm not clear on what Robert's talking about. Ben Carson is not an expert in housing, so it was always very strange that he was in that position to begin with. And when you cut the department by billions of dollars, it tells people what your priorities are.
Greg, I'm going to read this and I want you to respond. Carson has only used his authority as HUD Secretary to scrutinize widespread housing discrimination, moving ahead under public pressure on an investigation against Facebook that was initiated during the Obama administration. Here's the next piece. President Barack Obama's HUD secretaries used the tool known as Secretary-Initiated Complaints an average of 10 times per year, while President George W. Bush's second HUD secretary used it an average of 5 times per year. Carson has only used it once.
Oh, that's not surprising. I mean, we can go back to the fact that the staff at HUD has been hollowed out. And again, this, as Lauren said, he doesn't know anything about housing. He doesn't know anything, apparently, about buildings. Because remember when on your show on TV One, that's around the time that he said that the pyramids in Egypt were used to store grain. But at any rate, but the beautiful thing about Ben Carson, we're coming up on about the year anniversary. I guess it was last April that he proposed tripling the rent on people who have Section 8 and federal housing subsidies. In other words, biting into low-income folk who are already trying to pay for child care and health care. Ben Carson is a human joke as it comes to being a member of anybody's federal cabinet. And anybody trying to argue otherwise just finds himself indefensible. Go back to practicing surgery or write another version of Gifted Hands. But, brother, you need to leave housing alone.
All I'm going to do is I'm going to recite the facts, not the other stuff.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Calling all HBCU alumni, students, and leaders, enter the Ford Motor Company HBCU Mobility Challenge and win $25,000 for your school. Building on their long-term support of HBCUs, Ford is looking to improve mobility in HBCU communities through innovative solutions. The winning program will receive a grant of up to $25,000 to implement their proposal. The deadline, folks, is in 3 days. It's in 3 days. Go to FGB.Life. That's FGB.Life for more information and to apply. And remember, forward, goes further in our community. And we certainly appreciate them being a partner with us at Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.